Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our second broadcast where we deal with frequent misconceptions about Islam. Unfortunately, a lot of these misconceptions arise from the way Muslims present Islam to non Muslims. So we want to go back and look at what the Holy Quran says. So today's topic is, does the Holy Quran instruct Muslims to force others to convert to Islam? Is this our duty? So let us have a look at that. And I will recite one chapter of the Holy Quran, which is a very short chapter with 6 verses, chapter 109, Suratul Kafirun. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, say, O disbelievers, I serve not that you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve, nor shall I serve that which you serve, nor do you serve him whom I serve. For you is your recompense, and for me, my recompense. Now, I want to make a couple of things clear, and one is that the word kafir has become a term of abuse in Islam. And people object and say the Holy Quran calls us kafirs and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, that comes from a misunderstanding of Arabic and a failure to spend a few minutes looking at the words. The word kufr comes from, its root is kafara, and it means to hide, to cover, to hide. For example, a farmer is a kafir. He's actually called a kafir because why? Because he hides the seeds in the grounds. Your grave, where you're buried, the same word is used for that, al-kafru, because the body is hidden in that. Now, what happened was that because uh, hiding this way also means denying when you're hiding the truth. So the same word is used for denial, to deny, and so on. And it's also the opposite of shukr, which means for something to become apparent. So here the Holy Quran is not using any strong language or abuse or anything, but all it's saying is, "Oh, you people who are covering up, who are suppressing the truth." And the truth is the Holy Quran. And it says to them that, you know, I'm not going to worship the idols that you worship, and you are not going to worship the one true God. And then the last one is Hazrat Maulana Lakum Deenukum Waliyadeen, which Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali has translated as for you is your recompense, and for me is my recompense. Now, the word in both cases, lakum, deenakum, deen is used. And deen, again, in religious terms, it is actually alone. But in religious terms, as a metaphor, it stands for God's law. For example, in the lahil Islam, chapter 3, verse 19, as far as God is concerned, the only religion is Islam. And in fact, what it means is also obedience. So you could translate this verse in many ways. Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali has said, for you, your recompense, and for me, my recompense. Generally, it is said that deen stands for a way of life. So you could translate that. For you is my way of life that I've chosen, and for you is your way of life that you have chosen. Or you can translate it as, I will obey and follow Allah, and you obey and follow whoever you want. Now, to go back to the question, where is the compulsion in all this? At the end, the Holy Quran says, you do what you want to. Hazrat Maulana says, for you is your recompense, and for me is my recompense. Depending on the way you act, you will see what the result is. I will see what the result is. That is what recompense is, whether it's in this life or in the hereafter. So here the Quran is giving complete freedom to people to believe or not believe. Again, in chapter 6, the cattle, verse 108, God says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكُوا وَمَا جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا وَمَا أَنْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِوَكِيلٍ. And if Allah had pleased, they would not have set up others as gods with him. And we have not appointed you as a keeper over these people. And you are not made in charge of them. So, where is the compulsion? The Godhead says, if I wanted to, I would have forced people to believe in one religion. I would have forced people not to build idols. I didn't do that. I left it to people's free will to think and judge what they want to do. And this is what God said. So where is the compulsion? When God says, I don't compel anyone, and he says to the Holy Prophet, you're not their guardian, you're not their in charge. When God is not forcing people, who are you to force people? And then the next verse actually says, and abuse not those whom they call upon besides Allah, lest exceeding the limits of Allah, they abuse Allah through ignorance. Thus to every people have we made their deeds fair seeming. Then to their Lord is their return. So he will inform them of what they do. So then it goes on after saying that, your duty is simply to deliver the message. God says, I didn't force anyone. So, I haven't appointed you as a guardian. And then it says, show respect to others, even those they've set up as gods besides Allah. And then God says, we made their deeds fair seeming to them. They think what they're doing is right. So leave them to it. Because in the end, it is God who will decide what is right and what is wrong. So where is this instruction that Muslims should force others to convert to Islam, whether it is in a Muslim majority country or somewhere else. There is there is no instruction in the Holy Quran. You may say, well, it's one or two places and so on and so forth, but the Holy Quran is replete with this message. Another place, chapter 2, verse 256. La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion. The right way is distinct from the wrong way. So let them do what they want to do. But unfortunately, it's Muslims themselves who brought Islam into disrepute by misinterpreting the Holy Quran. For example, this La ikraha fid din. When we were in South Africa, there was a debate on that. And the scholars and Maulanas on the other side said, well, you don't force people to embrace Islam, but once they've embraced Islam, then if they try and leave Islam, then their punishment is, they'll have their heads cut off. And the judge did not accept this. The judge did not accept this. And she asked a question. She said, okay, a child is born to a Muslim parents. That child has no choice. He's born a Muslim. So is he allowed to leave Islam? And they said, no, his head will be cut off. And in her judgment, the judge wrote that I cannot believe that an intelligent person like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not realize that this would create a group of hypocrites in Islam who would outwardly show that they are Muslims because they know if they don't, their head will be cut off. But in their hearts, they'll deny Islam. And he said this verse cannot just mean that once you're a Muslim, then you cannot leave Islam. Interestingly, a Roman Catholic judge sitting in front of us with five different English translations of the Holy Quran and reading them and consulting them on every verse was arguing with a Muslim scholar saying that the Lahori Ahmadi interpretation saying that this means there is no compulsion in religion is correct, and that you can't force non-Muslims to join Islam, but you can force Muslims to remain Muslims is wrong. Anyway, I have quoted three different places. One says to the Holy Prophet, if I'd wanted, I would have stopped people from building idols. I didn't. They think it's the right thing to do. So they'll answer to me. And a short chapter which says those who disagree with you, tell them that you won't worship their idols. They don't want to worship God. Then, okay, for them is their way of life, and for you is your way of life. Or at the end, they will see what reward they get and what reward the Holy Prophet Muhammad or Muslims get. So, religion in Islam is entirely an individual's decision about what religion he wants to follow. There is no instruction. When the Holy Prophet is told that he is not to force people to join Islam, then who else can have the authority to force people to embrace Islam? So, Ahad, I don't know if you want to add anything more to what I have said.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very well given explanation and references for our today's topic. A very nice explanation given by Shahid uncle. And I would also like to add a few points into that. The topic we are addressing today is actually a very critical topic, that are Muslims commanded to force non-Muslims to embrace Islam? Why is it important? Because this subject is crucial to understand the fundamental principles of freedom and choice given in Islam. So it is for understanding this, it would be essential to explore what the Quran and the Sunnah has to say about this. So I'll be trying to uh, bring up the points from the Quran and the Sunnah regarding this particular topic, so that we are guided in the same way. So, first of all, I would like to quote the Holy Quran, which is our primary source of guidance, and it has provided us with clear instructions regarding this issue, this particular issue. The first reference I'm quoting is Surah Baqarah, ayat number 256. La ikra fid deen. There shall be no compulsion in acceptance of religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. So, this verse establishes the fundamental principle that faith must be a matter of personal conviction. Islam recognizes that the true belief cannot be achieved through force, but through individual understanding and acceptance. Now, the second verse which I would like to quote is Surah Kahf, which is the 18th chapter and its 29th verse, that says, "And say, the truth is from your Lord. So whoever wills, let him believe, and whoever wills, let him disbelieve." Now, what do we understand from this verse? This verse underscores the importance of free will in the matters of faith. It confirms that everyone has the right to choose their belief, highlighting the respect Islam has given for personal freedom and autonomy. There is a small example from the Prophet's Sunnah, which I would also like to quote. The Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad also underscores the principle of no compulsion in religion. The Prophet ﷺ engaged in peaceful dialogue and invited people to Islam through wisdom and good conduct, never through force. This is important to realize, that it was never through force. For instance, when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sent letters to various leaders inviting them to Islam, he would always do it respectfully, without any threats or any warnings. So, another historical context which I would like to add on in this particular discussion, when we go through the Islamic history, it provides numerous examples of this particular principle in practice. The early Muslim community in Medina included people of different faiths who lived together peacefully. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ established the Constitution of Medina, which guaranteed religious freedom to all inhabitants, including Jews and Christians. Not only just Muslims, but also the Jews and Christians. So, some misconceptions, they arise from the certain verses or hadiths. So, it's just essential to interpret these texts within their proper context. The Quran and Hadith consistently advocate for a peaceful propagation of Islam through dialogue and example, not coercion or force. Another significant verse in Surah Yunus also reinforces this principle. What is that verse? That is Surah Yunus, chapter number 10, verse number 99. "And had your Lord willed, those on the earth would have believed, all of them entirely. Then, O Muhammad, would you compel the people in the order that they become believers?" Now, this verse clarifies that if Allah had willed, He would have made all the humans believers. This reinforces the idea that guidance and faith are in Allah's hand, and humans are not to enforce belief upon each other. And another contemporary context which I would like to discuss here is that in today's world, respecting freedom of belief is crucial for promoting peace and coexistence. Now, a very important point to realize is that Islam's teaching align with modern principles of human rights, emphasizing voluntary faith and mutual respect. By embracing these values, Muslims can contribute to a more harmonious and global society. So, I would like to conclude my points by saying that Islamic teachings from the Quran and Sunnah unequivocally reject the idea of forcing anyone to embrace Islam. Instead, we Muslims are encouraged to invite others to Islam through wisdom, good conduct, and respectful dialogue. As Muslims, we must embody these principles, promoting a world where freedom of belief and mutual respect shall prevail. So, Jazakallahu khair. I think that should be it for my points. Thank you so much.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. I say to people, I ask people, who was the first person in among the Muslims to set up a secular state, and they start talking about Kamal Ataturk and this and that, and I said to them, no, it was the Holy Prophet Muhammad, because the summary of Constitution of Medina that you referred to was this: as long as you are loyal to the state of Medina, then no one will interfere in your religion. You'll be free to preach and propagate your religion as you wish.
Exactly.
And that is what a secular state is, that it treats all its citizens equally
True.
as long as they're loyal to the state. It does not interfere in their religion, and everyone is free to practice whatever religion they choose. The verse that I recited said that fair seeming to them are made their actions. Obviously, everyone believes or follows a particular religion because they think it's the correct one. No one says this religion is totally wrong, so I think I'll follow it. Do they? So the important thing is that in Islam that people always forget is that it is God who's to judge. He hasn't appointed me, he hasn't appointed you, he hasn't appointed anyone else
True.
to force people to embrace Islam.
Exactly.
And I also want to point out that Islam is a peaceful religion. It is not a passive religion. It does not say that if someone comes to cut your head off, you just lie down and let them kill you. And all of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's battles were fought in outside Medina, in the vicinity of Medina. And Islam progressed and prospered after there was a peace treaty with the opponents. And it was after that that Islam spread like wildfire throughout Arabia. This is an example from the life of our beloved Prophet, which shows that if we are to make progress, what we need is peace so that we can put the correct interpretation of Islam to people. So, shall we go to some questions?
Yes, yes, Shahid uncle. I think we have got some questions, and I would request you to please let's answer
Okay.
the questions one by one.
Did did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ever force people to convert to Islam? No, there is no example that the Holy Prophet ever uh, forced anyone to convert to Islam. He invited people to Islam. He propagated Islam. But what was the first thing that the Holy Prophet did when he announced he was the Prophet of Allah? He said, "Look at me. Look at my character. Have I ever lied? Have I ever cheated? Have I ever been dishonest and so on in my worldly affairs to get a benefit?" He put his character first to people. So, I mean, let alone force people to embrace Islam. When Christians came to debate with him and they wanted a break to go and pray, the Holy Prophet Muhammad Sallam said, "This is a house of Allah. Muslims will retire. You carry on with your prayers, and when you finish, then you tell us, and we'll come back and we'll continue our discussion." Now, what was the discussion about? The discussion was about whether the Holy Prophet Muhammad was a true prophet of Allah or not. That was the topic of that discussion. And yet, the Holy Prophet doesn't arrest them. He ruled Medina. There was only a small group. He didn't arrest them. He didn't whip them. He didn't lash them. He didn't cut their heads off. He even went so far as to vacate the mosque at Medina to let them continue with their prayers. Historical evidence. Is there any historical evidence that the early Muslims respected the religious freedom of others? Well, yes. I mean, I've already pointed to the Constitution of Medina, and there were Muslims and Christians and Jews and non-believers all living in Medina, and they were all given freedom to practice their religion. I just recited a verse of the Holy Quran. I had mentioned another one where everyone is told that, um, whatever path you choose, take that. Um, but remember that the Holy Prophet Muhammad gave guarantees, written guarantees to Christians. And these written letters were found in a monastery in Sinai, certainly one letter, which said that, I mentioned this last week, that this is an agreement between Muhammad, the Prophet of Allah, and the Nazarenes. And it said that they will not be harmed, their religious property will not be taxed. Actually, that is more liberal than in the West. If you're a charity or a church and you have income, you still have to pay tax on that. But the Holy Prophet said, if there is any income on religious properties, religious lands, it will not be taxed. And if Christians can't afford to repair their churches, then Muslim state will repair them and bear all the expenses and so on. And interestingly, people talk about Muslims forcing non-Muslims to embrace Islam. The Holy Prophet said that if a Zimmi, that is a non-Muslim living in a Muslim majority state, is harmed by Muslims, then on the day of judgment, the Holy Prophet Muhammad will take up his case against the Muslims who torture him or persecute him. Jews had been expelled from Jerusalem. It was Hazrat Umar Razilullah Ta'ala who sent people to find Jews and bring them to Jerusalem and relocate them to Jerusalem. So it wasn't in 1948 or whatever, late 30s, etc., that the Christians relocated Jews to Jerusalem. The first person to do that was a Muslim, Hazrat Umar. Then, when Jews were being burned at the stake, Jews and Muslims were being burnt at the stake in Spain, Suleiman the Magnificent sent his navy to rescue both Muslims and Jews. And he took the Jews and relocated them to what is Palestine. So Muslims have been protecting and saving Jews. So how can people say that Muslims compel others to follow their path? What does the Quran say about compelling someone to believe something? Well, the Quran says, this is chapter 10, verse 99, and had your Lord willed, those on earth would have believed, all of them entirely. Then, O Muhammad, would you force people in order that they become believers? And the other verse that I recited earlier on, that I haven't appointed you as a guardian to force people to embrace Islam. And here again, clear words. If I'd wanted to, everyone on earth would have believed. All of them, totally, entirely. God says, and this is the whole point about creation, that God gave Adam free will with which to decide what is wrong and what is right. If he chooses to follow the wrong path, God says, well, on the day of judgment, he'll be answerable to God, not to any human being. How should Muslims invite others to Islam according to Islamic teaching? Well, one verse that I recited earlier on, it said, if I can find it, it said, and abuse not those whom they call upon besides Allah. So a Muslim is not to use harsh language about anyone's revered religious deities or entities. And then in Surah chapter 16, verse 125, it says, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best. So gentle and polite discussion, and no, uh, like we find on many groups and so on, taunting people and haranguing them and this and that and so on. Are there any hadiths that support the principle of no compulsion in religion? I've already mentioned this earlier on, that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Whoever harms a dhimmi, I shall be his prosecutor on the day of judgment." This is, I'll give the reference now, Sunan Abu Dawud, Book 20, Hadith 3052. So that underscores that, I mean, the one thing that you must remember is when the Quran has said these things, why are you asking for Hadith? Quran is the word of God. It was preserved as it was revealed. And there was no way that the Holy Prophet could act contrary to the teachings of Islam. But there is a hadith which says that any non-Muslim under Muslim protection, if he's armed, then the Holy Prophet Muhammad will take up his case. Do Muslims have to compel others to embrace Islam to fulfill their religious duties? No. The Quran in another place, chapter 28, verse 56 says, you cannot guide whom you love, but Allah guides whom He wills. So guidance really comes from uh, Allah. Um, you can't even. I'll give you an example here. That there were two brothers. The elder one was very religious and strict and so on, and the younger one was a bit more sort of, worldly and so on. And the younger brother was going out, and Azan was being called, and the elder said, "Where are you going?" And he said, the younger brother said, "I'm just going to the cinema." So the elder brother got very angry, gave him two slaps, and made him stand on the prayer mat. And the younger brother said, "Out of respect for you, because you are older than me, I have come and stood on the prayer mat. But now I want to see how you can force me to perform the salah, how you can force me to pray." And that is the point. There is no point in compulsion because you can't force people sincerely to to do these things. Yes, it is our duty. It says, do Muslims have to compel others to embrace Islam? It's our duty to spread Islam, but in accordance with the instructions of the Holy Quran. Um, Here's another one. How does Islamic teaching on religious freedom compare with modern human rights principles? Well, modern human rights principles are actually derived from the Holy Quran. If you say that no, they're not, humans came up with them all on their own, well, then it took them 1400 years after the Holy Quran to come up with the same thing that was in the Quran. There is no compulsion in religion. So the right way and the wrong way are clear. If someone wants to follow the wrong path, then yeah, fine, it's up to him. So, in fact, a lot of the what we find in the uh, like European Convention of Human Rights and so on. I mean, for example, there should be no discrimination. What was it that the Holy Prophet Muhammad said in his last pilgrimage sermon? The white has no superiority over the black, and the black has no superiority over the white, and the Arab has no superiority over the non-Arab, and non-Arab has no superiority over the Arab, except in piety and doing good deeds. So, what does the European Convention of Human Rights say? Exactly the same thing, but what humanity could have achieved 1400 years earlier was delayed because people did not follow Islam. How can Muslims demonstrate the true Islamic teachings on religious freedom in today's world? In today's world, well, I mean, it's easy by showing respect to other religions. By when we talk to them politely, respectfully, nicely, a peaceful dialogue, and not haranguing them. And I mean, if you insult someone, they're just going to insult you back, which was the verse that I recited from the Holy Quran. And as chapter 16, verse 125 says, invite to the way of Allah, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best, which is don't be angry, don't try and force people, etc., etc. And all we have to do is follow the instructions in the Holy Quran. But remember, and this is very important, we talk about following the Sunnah and so on, but we actually don't do it because the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad is this, that when he invited people to Islam, he presented his character. Look at me. Have I ever cheated? Have I ever lied? Have I ever been dishonest? Have I ever deceived anyone? Have I ever usurped anyone's right? But if I haven't done it for worldly gain and benefit, why would I do it by claiming to be a prophet? And that is the problem, that we preach Islam, but we fail to present an example to show that such people can and do exist in Islam. And that is why periodically God sends mujaddids. Because people say, oh, that was 1400 years ago, this is now, things are different, and I can't do these things now, etc., etc. Why did God send the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad? To show that it is still possible in this day and age to act upon the instructions of the Holy Quran and follow the example, the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These people, what they do is they bring to us a living example that in every age it is possible to live in accordance with the instructions of the Holy Quran and Sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And this is why God raises them. This is why God raised Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, and Mahdi, to create a living example to show that you can live in this world and still be truthful, honest, kind, just, respectful, and so on. I think these are all the questions that we had. So, unless you got something else you want to add,
I
Ahad?
think no. I think Shahid, that should be it because we have almost answered all the questions we got via WhatsApp and Telegram. So yeah, I think that should be it for today's topic. We have tried to answer it from all the perspectives and uh,
Mm,
like the ways which we could from the Quran and the Hadith as well. And I
yep.
think we have explained it in a good way, which would help everyone to understand that Muslims are not commanded, they are not forced, they're
mm,
not told this, that you should force others, non-Muslims, to embrace Islam. It should be
yeah,
done in a very
yeah,
peaceful way, in a very nice way,
yeah,
as you have explained it
yeah,
very nicely in the answers. So
yeah.
for today's episode, I think that should be it. And
Right.
inshallah, in the next,
I just
yeah, yeah, sure, sure, please.
I just want to add that as we take our leave from you, as I always say, please remember to pray for everyone, regardless of their color, creed, nationality, religion, sect, etc. Pray, especially pray for the Palestinians, but also pray for the Zionists. That it's only God who can guide humanity to the right path, that God may guide them to the right path so that they stop engaging in these inhuman actions. And inshallah, we will meet next week again at the same time, 4 p.m.
Inshallah. Yes.
And
4 p.m.
deal
UK
with,
time.
sorry, yes, thank you for that. 4 p.m. UK time. And we'll carry on with some other topic, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. So I think, yeah, we should take leave for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Assalamu
wa
alaikum
barakatuh.
and khuda.
Khuda Hafiz.